I was in the bookshop the other day and I saw two Ali Smith books which made me think a lot about Ali Smith and made me want to make this video, in addition to the fact that I've read or tried to read Autumn and then gave up on it. And so yeah, this isn't like a review so much as just my thoughts, my like a brief chronology of my relationship with Ali Smith reading and why that has probably come to an end now. Although, I'd be interested to see in the comments if people try and convince me otherwise. The first book I saw in Waterstones was her new one, which just came out on Halloween no less, called Glyph. From reading the synopsis, I couldn't understand at all what it's about, but it was everywhere because they had all these signed copies and everything. I think it doesn't come out in America till next year, but it's here. But of course, yeah, me being a backlist boy, I had no idea that it was coming out, and it's just coincidence that I happen to have been thinking, I want to read Autumn by Ali Smith around this time. The second Ali Smith book I saw was not written by her. It was written by one of my all-time favorites, Tove Jansson. It's called A Winter Book, and it's a selection of short stories that Tove Jansson wrote, and if you kind of like look inside the cover, you'll see the person who did the selecting is none other than Ali Smith. So while when I saw Glyph, I had a kind of positive feeling like, oh, good for her, I hope she does well. She's like kind of Scotland's national treasure, I feel, or at least like maybe the most famous or influential like Scottish writer of the times. Is that I can't think of anyone off the top of my head, but yeah, her writing is like super internationally famous and she's very well loved, at least here on BookTube, and she's from a small country, so I want her to do well. But then when I saw this winter book, I had quite negative feelings because I love Tove Jansson, and she has one, like probably her most famous book that isn't the Moomins, is the Summer Book, and the Summer Book is a collection of vignettes about an old woman and a young girl who go and spend their summers on an island. So it's all these moments in summer, and it is a perfect seasonal book. And I just feel like because there's this trend for people enjoying matching their reading to the season, which I'm all here for. I'm doing it myself, obviously, but because that's happening now, I think it's Tove Jansson's book is great for booksellers, and there's just something a bit cynical, I think, about making a new collection of her short stories, like themed as a winter collection, when she didn't have that idea herself. She didn't put them together as a winter project in the same way she did the summer project. So you could call it an homage, and I like it when one writer selects the writing of another writer, and then you can kind of get an idea of both of them. But I also kind of feel like back off Ali Smith, like leave Tove Jansson alone. It's like when the artist is dead and you start riffing on what they were doing in a way which sells more. I just feel like that's kind of cynical. But yeah, that's probably just me being overly protective of my favorite writers who are dead and can't defend themselves. But also definitely don't care about this. Anyway, before I talk about Autumn and why I only read a tiny little bit of it before stopping, I'll talk about what else I read by Ali Smith. It's only a smidgen of her output, and it's not even like her most famous books. Maybe it's a bit brash of me to be saying, I'm done with this writer, I'm never reading another book by her again, when, I haven't read her, the things that are meant to be the most famous. But anyway, Antigone. I am a Greek myth nerd, as some of you may know, and this is the Story of Antigone, retold by Ali Smith. I think a lot of people don't even know this book exists. I don't think it's a famous book at all. It's a children's book, illustrated, as you can see there. I think illustrated in quite a lovely way. It's not like mind-blowing, but it's also really pretty, I think, some of these pictures, and they fit the tone of the story. That's the chorus of elder Thebans there, looking kind of ghost-like, and I like that. But yeah, for those who don't know the story is there's a war, and there's two brothers fighting each other. Both brothers die. The brother who was fighting for the city, defending the city, is given this big burial and big funeral and lots of the traditional thing that you'd expect. The brother who was attacking the city is left out on the field of battle to rot, to decay, to be eaten by wild animals, which is sacrilegious. It's terrible, because that means that his soul won't be able to go on to the next life. So it's seen for the ancient Greeks as like one of the worst possible things you can do to your enemy, is not allow them to be buried, or to allow anyone to come and bury them, right? It's prohibited. The new king, called Creon, makes a rule that nobody can bury the enemy's bodies. However, there is a young girl Antigone, the sister, and she is determined to bury her brother's bones. It's really good, and it's kind of one of the cornerstones of Western civilization, you could say. So, good to read. But it's also quite audacious to rewrite it, I think. Look at Tiresias there. He looks really freaky. I like that. But anyway, the main thing that she changes is that she has the narrator be a crow. And the crow wants to eat the dead brother, as crows do, like when they see carrion, they want to eat it. And so reading it, there's this kind of fun tension where the crow wants to get something but can't eat the brother because there's all these humans who keep coming over and wailing and talking about what to do about this dead body. So the crow wants to know, is it going to end up there, or are they going to bury it, or what's going on? So through this crow's perspective, and the crow is actually really funny, and Ali Smith is, I think, famous for her sense of humor. She gets humor into all her works, and this is no exception. The crow is our humorous guide into the play of Antigone, and it works really well. I forget the crow is a she or a he. I think the crow is a she because I think she ends up feeding her children, the dead brother. But anyway, I love this, and it's a great way if you want to, get kids into the Greek tragedies. Then this is the way. This is the bridge. This is the gateway drug. So this is, I think, quite a special book for me. It was also a birthday present, which makes it nice as well. Next, I read Girl Meets Boy, which is also connected to Greek mythology. Notice the theme here. It begins with Greek. Actually, is that Greek? Yeah, it looks like it's got some Greek in it. So she must be a Greek mythology nerd to the same degree that I am, I think. And this is a retelling of a myth from Ovid, who is one of my all-time favorite writers. And it is about sex change. There's a father who is going to kill his child if it's a girl. He only wants a boy for practical reasons, which is unfortunately a recurring motif throughout human history. So what the mother does when she sees she's given birth to a girl is say, it's a boy, and pretend that it's a boy, and the dad never bothers to check, so he's like, okay, cool, great. We'll set him to work as soon as he's old enough, I guess. The girl Iphis is raised as a young man, and eventually when she comes of age, she is set to marry another girl. And luckily, they fall in love with each other. The problem is, of course, that on the wedding night, all will be revealed. So she prays to the goddess Aphrodite, please, 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 make this work somehow. I don't want to die, but also I love this girl, and blah, blah, blah. And so the day is saved when Aphrodite actually does turn her into a boy. What Ali Smith does is to use that story as a vague outline to tell the story of two sisters in Scotland growing up in the modern day. One of them's gay, the other one isn't, and they're both like kind of I guess like at odds with each other in different ways, and then there's a love story as well with with the gay sister, and the more conservative sister is quite homophobic, and she works for a water company, and so there's a whole thing about water and the preciousness of water, which is actually reminding me a lot of another myth from Ovid, and I thought she was kind of like riffing on both of them, but it didn't say anywhere that she was. But anyway, this is kind of as much about water as it is about like queer gender fluidity. It's about, I guess, fluidity in many ways. After I read it, I was like, there were some nice examples of prose there. There was some very pretty writing and like some interesting scenes where like obviously she's using the idea of water to like try and write in a watery way and use the idea of Ovid's Metamorphoses to depict transformations as sort of emotional states and stuff like that. There were lots of nice bits in it. Ultimately, it just didn't hit for me in any meaningful way. The characters, the plot, the themes, all of it just didn't come together in a way that felt satisfying. It all felt like a bit empty. I can't remember like much of what actually happened in it, apart from what I told you and the fact that it wasn't satisfying. So at this point, I'd had one hit and one miss, and I was all ready to, try Ali Smith again to see what would happen. Enter Autumn. I love this this library cover, by the way. Like it's the hardback, but it's got the little flap, and yeah, it looks like they just I don't know if it originally came with a slip or if the library just wanted to put some color on the book so that people picked it up, and so they made this. I think the library made this. Anyway, it's cute. I like it. So why did I go for this one in my continuing Ali Smith journey instead of any of the other ones? This isn't her most famous one, but her seasonal quartet, the 4 books that she wrote based on the 4 seasons that she was living through at the time, is quite famous, and I think a lot of people get into Ali Smith that way probably because of aforementioned trend of wanting to read seasonal books or books that match the season. But autumn was the first one that she wrote. It's autumn now, so that's an obvious reason to go for this one. I did always mean to start with autumn during an autumn, so this was the perfect time to do it. The other reason is that I'm actually quite interested in books that are about Brexit and the whole Brexit thing that was going on there. This is meant to be the first Brexit novel, because it was being written, I think, as it happened or like just after it happened. And she does talk about Brexit in this book. It's something that I'm interested in, having lived through it, I guess, and I haven't yet read a writer who kind of captures it really properly in the way that resonates with me. So I'm looking for that, I guess. That's something I'm looking for in books. So if you know a great book that is about Brexit, then please let me know down in the comments. I think, what have I read? I've only read Ghost Wall by Sarah Moss, is that it? I think that's it, probably. And that's like quite indirect as well. But anyway, after I picked this book up, I saw in the opening little page where they do the, everything here is fiction. If it sounds like it's something real, then that's not just a coincidence. Don't sue me kind of page, right? On this, they also have the bit where they tell you where they had to take extracts from other books that are copyrighted, right? And the first thing I noticed, like out of the corner of my eye, just opening the book, is the name Ovid and his work Metamorphoses. So there are lines from Ovid in this book, and that made me very excited. So yeah, we're getting some more of my favorite Roman, maybe doing some Greek mythology if I'm lucky, and it's the first book about Brexit. There's going to be Brexit stuff going on in there, and I've been meaning to try Ali Smith, and it's autumn, and it's called Autumn. Like, everything is looking good at the outset of this book. And then I actually started reading it. It was the worst of times. It was the worst of times. Again, that's the thing about things. They fall apart. Always have, always will. It's in their nature. I don't even like those opening lines, but they're, unfortunately, oddly appropriate for my reaction to this book. Even the thing, the things fall apart kind of allusion. She's very elusive. She's always alluding to things, and not all of them I get, but I get that one. That's the poem by W.B. Yeats, where he says things fall apart, the centre cannot hold. And that was being quoted all the time during the Brexit thing, because the centre ground of politics was being eviscerated, and still is in many Western countries at the moment. But let's put all that aside. This isn't a politics show. This is a book show. I don't think I like her style. Her style of writing it's kind of like a dream at the beginning, especially. There's no quotation marks, a la Cormac McCarthy, and I think quite a few writers at the moment. But yeah, like the speech and the descriptions almost kind of blend into each other. And this opening scene is there's an old man and he washes up on a beach, apparently somewhere in the Mediterranean, and he's disorientated. He's sort of like counting his fingers and trying to, understand if he's in his body or not in his body, or if he's dead or if he's not dead. He decides he is dead. He's also like kind of referencing John Keats and making puns, and his name is Daniel, so he seems like, kind of well-off English old man, although I think we find out later on that he's not English. But yeah, I felt uncomfortable from the very beginning, because like when you hear about people being washed up on the shore and being dead in the Mediterranean, both at the time of writing this novel, but sadly today as well, it just, brings to mind the refugee crisis, and it does to me anyways. It's like really forefront in my mind if I hear these kind of descriptions. But it wasn't, a poor Middle Eastern person. It's replacing it with maybe the kind of person who's more likely to read this novel, which is a middle class Western person. So with those kind of references and background points and quoting poets and things like that. So that was jarring, and I was like, where is this going? I wonder. Then what happens, which was kind of interesting, was that like these girls appear, and then he's embarrassed by his nakedness, and so he runs into the bushes to avoid them. And that is a scene that happens, a really famous scene from the Odyssey. Odysseus washes up on the shore, like half drowned, half dead, and a princess called Nausicaa, who, as a side note, Hayao Miyazaki really liked. But she comes with her coterie of handmaidens, and they see a guy, and they're all freaking out, but she decides to be brave, and she approaches him, and he's trying to cover up his nakedness, but still looks kind of wild and dangerous. But she approaches him and, asks him if he's all right, invites him to her father's palace, and is the Homerian definition of a good host. which is a huge thing in the Odyssey. The key event in the Greek myths of somebody being kind and welcoming to somebody who has just washed up on their shore is something I'd never thought about in the context of the refugee crisis. And so that was clever to put them together, because obviously Greece is one of the places where so many people have died and drowned and been washed up on islands and been kept in like basically internment camps because they're trying to escape into Europe, right? So that is a really interesting connection to make. But I still didn't know if that's what Ali Smith wanted to do, because she hadn't said anything about refugees at that point. It was still just this guy, making puns. So I felt quite uncomfortable feeling like it's all like there's these allusions to Greek mythology and in the Mediterranean and this, but we're kind of skirting around the main issue. And then at the end of that little section, finally, they do say something about dead refugees. But instead of being impactful so much, I kind of felt like, oh, finally she gets to the missing piece of this. So even though the ideas were good, I think it didn't really work for me personally, because I was like, when are we getting to the meat here? And I didn't care for the narrator and his way of talking about himself and reminiscing about who he used to be, and like the sort of wordplay and stuff. Sometimes it's clever and funny and witty, and I found that in all of the Ali Smith books I've read so far. She can be very funny and witty, but often the wit doesn't connect to the themes and the story. It's just like a joke or something like that, and I like jokes as much as the next person, I guess, but they don't make a book better for me unless they're doing something which connects to the story or the characters. Like, that's the kind of thing that person would say, you know what I mean? Whereas often they just feel like Ali Smith. So yeah, that was a rocky start. Then I got more into the story. I did read more than that. I read after that. I thought like, okay, now the real book will begin, now that we got past that kind of unsatisfactory dream sequence. And we go into this person called Elizabeth Demand, which I can't take seriously as a name. But yeah, it says 32 years old, no fixed hours, casual contract junior lecturer at a university in London. Living the dream, her mother says, and she is, if the dream means having no job security and almost everything being too expensive to do, and that you're still in the same rented flat you had when you were a student over a decade ago. That's the beginning. And it's like, okay, I'd like to read about this character, but it seems a bit on the nose, I guess, for me. Maybe it wasn't on the nose back in 2016, and in that case, it just hasn't aged well. But it just seems like, yeah, everybody knows that this is what it is like to be a millennial. So it's like, you can maybe describe it in a more interesting way. And again, that's the first sentence, so it's like, I want to be hooked. I don't want to be feeling like, yeah, okay, come on, get on with it. And then she gets into an argument at the post office, and the way they speak to each other is so unrealistic, and it feels like it's just forced humor, and I couldn't gel with it at all, so I just ended up putting it down. I think it's supposed to be like criticizing needless bureaucracy and seeing how certain social institutions in the West have declined and decayed, and I imagine by the time we get to the end of it, we'll see how there's hope for other things. But it just, like, I kind of could see everything, how it felt like it was panning out, and their style of writing really bothered me for some reason. So I read up to the point where we find out that the old man, Daniel, is friends with this millennial called Elizabeth, and the story, I think, is going to be about their relationship, but I didn't want to hear about it, so I stopped. I did, however, skim through a lot of the book looking for the word Ovid and looking for the word Brexit. I found some stuff on Brexit, and it was like, basically, yeah, people are divided. Some people in the UK think this, some people think that, and we're all turning against each other. And I guess I like that in the way that it managed to not take a side on the issue while still not sounding totally just like, listing platitudes of why can't we all get along. So I think she did that pretty well, but also not really satisfactory, because I kind of want to read somebody who does take a side on the issue and makes it more meaty, even if it's not a side that I necessarily agree with 100%. It's just more interesting to read those kind of convictions. So the Brexit bit that I read was okay, and then the Ovid I found was also I don't know, it was cool. It was something from Metamorphosis about something transforming, and she just quotes some stuff about stuff transforming into other stuff. She takes some of the good lines of which she has many. So yeah, unfortunately, autumn ended early for me. And I think I'm not going to read more Ali Smith, at least not for the time being. I can't see myself, because it's been 3 books, it's been a hit and miss, and nah. So let me know if you're an Ali Smith fan, or if you've read, well, more widely read than me with Ali Smith, then is there one that you think that I would like based on what I've said? Or do you think that now that I've read what I have read and not really liked anything except for her kids book, I should just wait until she writes more kids books based on Greek mythology and not read anything but that? Let me know down in the comments. I'd really like to hear what you all think about Ali Smith, her writing and her books, if you've read anything at all by her, whether it's the good, the bad, or the ugly. So that's all for this time. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in my next video. Bye!